The Ministry of Finance and the Public Service presents Let's Talk Finance, a feature exploring the various elements of the economic program.
Welcome again to Let's Talk Finance here on Nationwide 90 FM. We continue the discussion we began last week on financial inclusion, the financial inclusion strategy. My guest this week, as she was last week, the National Financial Inclusion Coordinator, Melanie Williams. She works out of the Bank of Jamaica, BOJ. Welcome again, Melanie.
Thank you so much for having me, George.
Good. So let's get down to brass tacks as it relates to the... People don't like to say the ordinary Jamaican. Somehow they think it's pejorative. I don't think it is, so I'll use it. The regular Jamaican, the everyday man and woman, which you and I are members of that colony, right?
Right.
There we go. So they listened to us in the first episode, and they said, yeah, but I'll know George and the nice lady, and tell me, what it mean for me? Oh, financial inclusion, I go help me. I put that question to you.
Financial inclusion really is designed to help you by empowering you. First and foremost, we are going to see a change in how products are packaged and marketed in terms of simplicity, ease of understanding, so that all of us can actually understand what is involved in actually engaging in a financial service. Mm-hmm. How do you access the service? How do you register a complaint? How do you resolve a complaint? How do you get your money? What's the repayment on a loan, for example? How is your credit score calculated? That type of thing. So financial inclusion is first empowering you through information, giving you access to information to make the right decisions for you. Secondly, financial inclusion is about moving Jamaica very firmly into the first world economy that it is destined to be. And this is through use of technology, fintech. So you'll see more and more leveraging of new products, for example, or electronic retail payment services products, which are designed to actually facilitate peer-to-peer transactions, person-to-business payments. Yes. It's also designed to facilitate bill payment and to enable you to actually deal with your money in a manner that will not have you being robbed on the street because you have to carry large sums of cash. Yes. That other element is also designed for you to build your footprint so that you have protection. You are who you are, yes, and no one can take your identity from you. Yes. So that's part of what we're looking at with financial inclusion. Another aspect of it is to design products that actually are better segmented, targeted rather to the market segments that we intend to benefit the excluded communities we spoke of earlier. Yes. And we're looking at persons who are from all aspects, the middle class, the working class, as well as even businesses, the medium-sized businesses that are trying to transition and become part of larger global supply chains. Yes. So that's what financial inclusion means for you. How can you better get the information you need, access the services you need, save the way you want, pay the way you want, and see a return, a dividend in terms of less stress, ease of doing business, less time spent trying to transact financial services, and actually having greater security, control over your money, control over your identity. That's what's in it for you. Mm-hmm.
I was tempted to ask you about, I'm tempted to ask in this way about a collision. I still am going to say use the word collision, because if two magnets collide, it makes for a more powerful magnet, doesn't it? Yeah, but normally when you say when things collide, you're usually talking about an adversarial relationship. So I say all of that to say, Melanie, the collision between the MSME sector, very big, largely unregulated, just the same, and people there having, the entrepreneurs having anxieties about many things. So between them, that constituency, and the financial inclusion strategy, when that the twain meets, what is the benefit that redounds to MSMEs from signing up, subscribing to what the financial inclusion strategy is seeking to achieve?
Well, if you first examine it as more of an amalgamation, a merger, rather than a collision. Right. Because the financial inclusion strategy, actually we have the bulk of the strategy really focuses on MSME finance. And many of the action items are being led by the Ministry of Industry, Agriculture, Commerce and Fisheries and the Development Bank of Jamaica, because we recognize that MSMEs are central to moving our economy forward. The concern that the MSMEs have, the right concern that they have, is they need to be assured that their pain points in terms of being able to transact business in their ability to access credit, those are going to be addressed. How are they going to get financial products that suit them, and what incentives are we going to give them for those that are operating in the informal sector, many of which are micro enterprises, to transition into the formal sector. So what you'll find is a layering of different streams of work. For example, a lot of work is going to be invested in greater utilization of the secure transactions regime. Now, that's a fancy term for saying the ability of micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises to access credit using movable collateral. So looking at your inventory financing, being able to better leverage that, having your creditor registering their interest in the national, what we call the national SIPA registry, which is actually maintained by the company's registry.
Yes.
And that's part of the solution. The other part of the solution is to have a greater uptake of facilities such as a partial credit guarantee, which supports any micro, small or medium-sized enterprise borrowing from an approved financial institution, which could be a bank, credit union, and in fact being able to have the comfort of having that partial credit guarantee secure that loan. That's some of the elements that we seek to change. And micro enterprises, and very different in nature, actually. Their needs are very different from medium and small enterprises.
Yes.
And part of the strategy is designed to look at informality and to improve the data surrounding each segment of MSMEs so that that can guide the policy development and the strategies that we implement.
So for MSMEs, okay, that component is there and that facilitation is there. What about in the agricultural sector? You touched on it to a large, well, you touched on it, not to a touch to a large extent. You touched on it in the first installment. How does the players in agriculture, whether you're into agro-processing or traditional ways of production, how do they benefit from this financial inclusion strategy?
So the strategy also looks at very specific action items, again being led by MICAF, to be done for agricultural finance. They include building out the technical capacity of our farmers. They include actually having dialogue with their financial institutions so that they can better finance the development of risk coping mechanisms to deal with some of the threats to the industry, be it from climate change, as well as the typical hurricane patterns, which are also, as we know, influenced by climate change. You also see an improved streamlining, if you will, of the flows of funding through our National People's Cooperative Bank, as well as work being done by the Development Bank of Jamaica. That's part of the continuing effort being done by the strategy through our public sector players under the agricultural finance component. But there is an intersection, if you will, between MSMEs and agricultural finance, because MSMEs are often spoken of as a sector, but the reality is micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises are operating in each of the subsectors of our economy, services as well as manufacturing. And agro-processing is one example of that.
You'd accept, though, Melanie, why I distinguish them, because
Absolutely.
like you, I see the way you have just articulated it, but how it is viewed, it is
Exactly.
as if you have MSMEs over one side in north, and you have agriculture, so as if the
As if they're
people in
distinct.
agriculture are not micro, small, and medium-sized sector
They're
enterprises.
business entrepreneurs as well.
There you go.
So what we need to do is what you've just said highlights the importance, and this is part of the strategy of changing the conversation, which is what MICAF is very invested in. In January of this year, following a series of several stakeholder consultations, which were led by MICAF's MSME unit, there was actually the ability to revise a limited review of the MSME policy and revise the definitions of micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises, and also recognition of the importance of social enterprises. And what that process found is that agriculture remains relevant, very relevant to where we want to position ourselves as a country in terms of participating in the global economy, the value added of having agro-processing, the value added of our agricultural parks. These are some of the elements that you want to do. You want to be able to open the doors to take a farmer from the farm to being able to participate in a trade show, to being able to eventually have his product being on the shelves of an international market, a large supermarket or retail chain.
Yes.
That's where we're seeing the intersection. So we are all about changing the dynamic and the thinking. And also what we are doing with the strategy is having a greater understanding of what financial institutions are best positioned to meet the needs of a particular class or group of entrepreneur, and where are they able to better access credit from, and how can they do so with greater ease, while at the same time ensuring financial stability is maintained so that the creditors are protected in terms of their ability to realize any collateral which is put forward or to recover any debt.
Oftentimes when strategies are implemented or are being implemented or even conceptualized and discussed, you often hear from these strategy intends to benefit that, you know what, this strategy won't work because you don't have enough of our input. The beneficiaries' input is limited because what happens, they say, men and women in smart suits sit and say, okay, this is strategy for that. They've never farmed in their lives, so I don't know how they can tell me what strategy to pursue and how to ensure that I'm financially viable and so forth. They've never engaged in the manufacture of cardboards or whatever it is that I'm doing as a micro, small, medium-sized enterprise player in that sector. And that is a disaster. That is a recipe for disaster because
Agreed.
not enough of how we think our problems can be solved is actually in the problem-solving strategy being pursued.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. And that's what we strive to move away from in actually strategic design and implementation under the NFIS, the National Financial Inclusion Strategy. Now, that was informed by both supply side and demand side. But as we implement this strategy, there's an ongoing stakeholder engagement. And that requires from us to take a very important psychological shift. Kingston is not Jamaica.
Aye.
It is not.
Oh, yes.
Neither is Portmore, neither is St. Andrew.
Yeah, neither is Mobe.
Neither is Mobe.
Yes.
And in fact, our largest urban centers and our semi-urban centers are just one aspect of financial inclusion. More needs to be done. So that's part of the ongoing thrust, to have a roadshow of actually going out there and meeting people and understanding, okay, this sounds good, but does it make sense for you? Does it address your concerns? I must say, though, that the implementation of the strategy has benefited from the involvement of the National Consumers League as one example, and ongoing dialogue with a number of the financial institutions that are close to the ground. You know, we've had the benefit of two microfinance institution association groupings in actually implementing this strategy, JAMFA and JAMFIN. We've also had the benefit of having our bankers, you know, as part of the discussion. But what we need to do is to do more of what we started to do in the beginning. We actually went down to Coronation Market and saw how business and commerce actually flowed and tried to relate that to how our mobile wallet products would actually work, our electronic retail payment services products would actually work. There has to be an understanding of the actual environment by the regulator when it now shifts from being just a regulator to actually developing and implementing the strategy so that they actually meet the needs of all of us. Because as you say, I mean, there's no point remaining isolated from the very group of people that you need to work with as opposed to dictating down a strategy.
Yes. You know, I like that bit when you said that you even go down to Coronation Market. When I worked in radio and I had to be dealing with a particular line of issues, I used to go to
Absolutely.
I still used to go to Coronation Market because I didn't want any MP to tell me how much cabbage was being sold for a tomato. I wanted to know for myself.
Exactly.
So I could put in context what they were prescribing as the solution to any shortage or any difficulty farmers faced getting their products
And the
to
supply
market.
and demand factors
There
at
you go.
work. And also, we've had industry consultation ongoing, even as recently as last week. And in the meeting that we had, you know, in terms of our stakeholder advisory group, looking at financial inclusion issues, right away it became so apparent that we had to have greater segmentation of the different groups that have their interests so that their interests are properly represented. And we have to treat the need of a small farmer versus a large-scale commercial farmer controlling many tracts of land as distinct. There has to be an understanding of that. And it's not an academic exercise. It has to be implemented. That being said, again, in ongoing discussions with MICAF, as we look at pushing out factoring, at improving the secure transactions regime, the involvement of entities such as the Jamaica Manufacturing and Export Association will be critical. Without them, we will not have success. And we're looking forward to having further dialogue with them because the businessman generates the ideas.
Excellent.
The businessman understands his business and understands his pain point and knows how long he's had to stand up in line at a bank or anywhere else to pay a bill or have a transaction done. So that's who we need to discuss all of these strategic action items with and refine the strategy, change the indicators so that they are continually relevant. Because the financial inclusion project, while initially conceived of as a 3-year project, we recognize, having had the benefit of Vision 2030 and also the growth strategy, that this is a long-term part of the discussion for the Jamaican economy for many years to come, and therefore must be adaptable. Like any business, it must be agile.
Excellent.
So you have to adjust based on the needs of our representatives, which are the people of Jamaica.
Nimbleness and agility
Yes.
Those are the crucial words where this strategy is concerned. All right, that's the end of our time. That's all our time for installment 2 of this discussion on the financial inclusion strategy. My guest, Melanie Williams. She is National Coordinator, Financial Inclusion, National Financial Inclusion Coordinator. Yes, George, you just got it right there. And she'll be back next week for the third and final installment as we discuss this topic. Melanie, pleasure to have you.
Thank you again.
That was Let's Talk Finance, brought to you by the Ministry of Finance and the Public Service.